right, here we are doing Creativity is the Cure again. This is Malcolm Moore. Today I have my wonderful guest, Jon Manfrellotti. Welcome, Jon.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Malcolm. It's a pleasure to be here. I mean, I can't tell you how excited I am. I mean, I really, physically, I can't tell you that.
All right, so since we're talking about creativity, Jon, I was just explaining to you that this podcast is about not just creativity to make art and music and comedy, all that stuff. How do we use it in our real lives for regular things? If you don't know Jon, he's an actor, comedian, and guitarist. And Jon, I guess our first question today is, when did you first realize you could make people laugh?
When did I first realize I could make people laugh? Well, I swear, when I was a little kid and my older brothers, I had 2 older brothers and 2 older sisters, and they would make me do stuff and then they would laugh. And I was too young to understand, but I liked it. So I like when they did it. But I think, and then I would do it on my own just so I could make them laugh. So I realized when I started making my older brothers and sisters laugh,
it was a good feeling.
I was like 6, maybe.
Yeah, and did you make your parents laugh too?
Yes, absolutely. My mother I made laugh for different reasons, but you know, like she'd be vacuuming and I would throw a banana peel in front of the vacuum while she was vacuuming, you know. But that's a whole different other story. But then, in continuing with your question, is in school, like when a lot of guys and ladies find out they're funny, is when you're making your friends in school laugh.
Were you the typical guy? I know you pretty well and you're smart. Did you get bored in class and then it was time to make people laugh?
Yes. Yes.
What were your teachers like back then? Were they pretty laid back and cool, or were they very conservative and strict?
They were all of that. I knew I was funny when the teacher would laugh and then say, okay, that's enough, we need to get back to work. Like I wasn't doing things where I'm putting pencils in my noses and stuff. You know,
right.
I just had a quick wit, even in like elementary school, you know. So when the teacher was laughing, I knew, that's funny.
What's your first memory of using creativity? So this could be, I mean, I know you pretty well, but this could be anything. Drawing, making
I was just going to
laugh.
say, when I was a kid, I loved drawing.
Really?
Yeah, well, my older brother was a pretty good artist. So we would draw all the time, and that's where I remember. We played a really cool game with the Sunday funny papers. You know, people who are listening to this go, what's he talking about?
I remember.
But the newspaper would have all that, like a whole section of what do they call them?
Cartoons.
Yeah, cartoon comics.
Sunday comics, yeah.
Yeah, the Sunday comics. We would play a game where I would look through it. Let's say I was looking through Archie or something, and in the background of one of the things was a broom leaning against the wall. I would draw the broom, and then my brother would look at the broom, and he would have we'd each have 30 seconds to go through the paper and find out what we drew.
Wow.
And then, you drew the broom in the background of Archie, you know what I mean?
So do I understand this correctly? You would look at a cartoon that's already made and then kind of improv and make your own drawings?
Well, no, we would just pick one thing. Let's say there was a bowl of fruit on the table, and there was a whole thing going on with the family. Had nothing to do with anything, but there was a kitchen table there and a bowl of fruit. So my brother or I would draw the bowl of fruit, and then either one, let's say if my brother drew it, I would get the paper and I'd have 30 seconds to go through it and find out where that bowl of fruit was. So that's how I remember using drawing as a creative game, even when I was 8 years old, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like kind of your own Dungeons and Dragons way.
Oh, yeah, it was good. It was good. Very creative.
How about your parents? Were they creative, and do you think their creative identity was passed on to you at all genetically? Do you see parts of yourself that are funny that are from your mom or dad?
No. What's the next question? Well, my mother made clothes. She was a seamstress, so she was creative in that way. My father was just a likable guy, but I never saw him do anything creative with artwork or, anything like that.
Well, somehow you and your brothers got
it was
somewhere.
my brothers and sisters, like my oldest sister, who's really older than me. She's 15 years old, but she was a really good singer, and she even cut an album when she was like 18.
That I didn't know. Now, wait a second. What kind of music?
Well, she's older than me by 15 years, so it was show tunes type of stuff,
wasn't easy to put an album out back then. That's pretty impressive.
No, and she, I think confidence got her, because she had a really good voice, but, you got to really want it. And my older brother, who was, I just mentioned, he was a good artist, so that inspired me. My other brother was a really good baseball player. And my other sister was an excellent dancer. So I think that's where all my creativity and...
so is the environment,
too,
right? So 5 siblings altogether? 2 brothers, 2 sisters?
2 brothers, 2 sisters, and me.
Oh, that's really cool. What's your earliest memory of a very creative comedian that you remember being inspired? Maybe you didn't want to be a comedian until later, right?
Yeah, no, not till later. Well, as far as what in creative comics, I immediately think of George Carlin, but not that I was a kid with Carlin, because I discovered Carlin when I was like 19, and I listened to Class Clown, and just the way he used words and voices, and it wasn't just joke telling. So that's why I was
storyteller.
Yeah, and like if he acted out bits, like, say, Dan, hand me that, he would do it rather than just, as a kid, 10, 11 years old, I remember watching the Ed Sullivan Show with my father and him laughing his ass off at Rodney Dangerfield.
Oh, yeah.
But Rodney was just quick-witted jokes. Carlin, to me, was like, wow, you can do that with comedy, with comedy. You can.
That's a good point. There's different types of comedy.
There's slapstick,
storytellers.
Yeah, exactly.
It sounded like you hinted at something that I'm always interested and curious about. Were you talking about one of George Carlin's albums? Because I remember back in the day, like I would buy like a Cheech and Chong album or a Lenny Bruce album. Did you have any of his records?
Yeah, Class Clown, it was called. Was the first one. Yeah, Class Clown. And then there was another one that came out after that. I can't remember the name of that.
This is a good question. When you were younger, how did you hear comedy? Very different than younger people do today. So records, TV, anything else?
TV and records. That was about it, unless you went to go see it. I saw Carlin live in New York in 1975.
How was that to see him live?
It was great. He opened... Am I allowed to curse on here?
Sure.
He opened up... He opened up. He didn't, he just walked out and he said, I had breakfast. I poured my milk on my cereal and it went snap, crackle, fuck you. That was his first joke, And it just made me laugh right out of the gate and stuff.
Wow. Now, I know you've done a lot of acting, and that's probably the first time that I heard about you. It doesn't have to be a comedy actor. Who's a creative actor today or from when you were younger who you thought was inspiring?
Well, when I was younger, I loved that whole, Pacino, that whole
Scorsese.
era. Yeah, Scorsese and De Niro and all that stuff. But there's been so many actors. I always loved Jeff Bridges was one of my favorite actors.
It sounds like a lot of these guys you like were method. Would that be true? Like their approach?
Well, I don't even know specifically. Maybe Pacino and them. I don't know what Bridges' method is. I just like their work, Yeah. It's so real. And, of course, Daniel Day-Lewis is amazing.
Oh, my God.
Because becomes a different person.
Yes.
Everything he does is incredible.
You're right. There's different types of actors. Character actors, people that become them.
Exactly.
Have you ever seen that? Have you ever worked with anybody that stayed in character on the set?
Nothing's jumping out at me. But I haven't worked with these. I haven't worked with Brando. So I guess
So most of the people that you have worked with, even if they're deep into character yourself or somebody else, as soon as they say cut, you're just back to goofing around, even if it's serious. I mean, I was just watching.
No, not really. Because if you got work to do and they yell cut, I don't start joking around. I stay in character, but it doesn't mean I'm the character. If somebody walks up to me and asks me the time, and I just stay in character to myself.
Well, I'm thinking specifically, as you know, I've been watching Men of a Certain Age, and there's a part where you get cancer on there, and you do seem very depressed, very tired, all that stuff. So did it help you to stay in that feeling while you guys were doing scenes?
You can't help but, you know what I mean? And if you really, you're talking about the scene when he comes to the house?
He comes to the house and he's like, I don't want to do any bets today, and you're lying on the couch, and before he knows it, he falls asleep.
Yeah, well, as an actor, you prepare before the scene, you know what I mean? And whatever way gets you there.
Right.
And then, you stay in that. So I'm sure I did a prep that got me into that head, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's not just, hey, the other day I was at, I'm so depressed. That's not the way it works.
No, wait, I got to ask you this, because not everybody knows that I know that you love dogs. Uh-huh. And I kind of asked you about this before, but the dog on that show, was he an actor?
Yes.
Or was he improvising?
No, that dog was amazing.
He was good. Do you remember his name?
I'm trying to remember. His name in the show was Bullethead.
Right.
But I'm trying to remember because it was, it's 20 years ago.
It seems like you guys had a relationship. Did you take a minute to try to get to know the dog, or are you just really good with dogs?
The handler, when we first started using the dog, would bring the dog over.
Bullethead.
And I would, I'm trying to remember what the dog's actual name was.
He did have to act, though, because if his name really wasn't Bullethead, you had to call him by a different name while you were filming.
Exactly.
He's good. He's method.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I guarantee in the credits is the dog's name. If you find the credits, if you're watching the show.
The end of the show.
But the dog, I don't remember the dog's name, but yeah, the dog was a professional dog. It was incredible. The dog was so funny.
Okay, now let's get to the heart of this. You and I know each other because we play in a blues band together. So let's talk about music. You're a guitar player. Mm-hmm. How did you originally get into playing music? And because we know you're a guitar player, name a couple of guitar players who inspired you back then or now.
Well, obviously, seeing the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan
That
show.
was the big thing.
That
right?
was it. In school, it was before that, we had to take an instrument. I took trumpet.
That I didn't know about you.
Well, I wanted to take saxophone, but my neighbor signed up first, and you don't want, he's going to think, I'll do trumpet. Well, I took trumpet and hated it. I did it like 5 minutes. So then I dropped that, and then I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. And that was it.
Did you think guitar right away? Is that the instrument that caught your attention?
And then I bugged my parents to get me a guitar, and they bought me an acoustic guitar, and I started taking lessons, and it was hard, and I loved playing baseball and football with my friends and riding my bike. So it was the F chord that made me put the guitar down for 6 years. And then I heard Cream on the radio.
Okay.
And I went, wait a minute, hold on a second, you know what I mean? So Clapton was the first, George Harrison was the first, and John Lennon, but Clapton took it to the next step because of the Beatles never soloed and jammed like
right, and
that.
Isn't that why they brought him in for my guitar challenge? They needed him to take it a little further.
So then I became a Cream fan and a Clapton fan. I followed Clapton's career, and then that morphed into other guitar players. Then the Allman Brothers came along.
That's a big deal for you, Allman Brothers.
And Duane and Allman and Dickie Betts were two of my all-time favorite guitar players. As a matter of fact, I learned more from Dickie Betts than I did because Duane was, first of all, he played in open tuning, he played slide. I wanted to just learn how to play, and Dickie Betts was so melodic that it was easier to learn what notes he was doing, and then it just morphed into other guitar players. I would hear then I heard B.B. King and Albert King.
So early on, you were into blues, probably because a lot of these English blues guys,
exactly,
that's what they were inspired by. So you went back to the source, right? The original blues guys.
Then I heard Larry Carlton, because I heard a band called the Crusaders, the Jazz Crusaders, and Larry Carlton is still to this day one of my favorite guitar players. Then Robin Ford, because I got a Tom Scott and the LA Express albums. So everything leads to... but Clapton and the Allman Brothers are the foundation of me.
Yeah.
Saying guitar. As a matter of fact, guitar took drawing away from me.
Wow.
Once I totally got into playing the guitar, I hardly ever drew anymore.
Now, I'm curious because I'm a music teacher. If you were a guitar player back then, was there any opportunities at your school to play guitar? Or was it more classical?
No, it was all, when an instrument was required, it was either string, violin, or
brass.
I guess, or brass.
So
saxophone.
Orchestra, right?
Yeah, it was that.
So unless you were playing Segovia, some classical.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I remember when I was 11 years old and I was taking guitar lessons from this woman, and the lesson was, that song, Camptown Racers, sing this. She's trying to show it to me, and I'm like, I don't want to play this. I want to play Day Tripper by the Beatles.
Right. And what was her response?
To this day, it's so cool. The next lesson, a week later, she figured out or learned the and wrote it down and showed it to me.
Good
you know
teacher.
what I mean? Yeah, I thought it was Miss Del Preet, her name was. So
if you didn't have an opportunity to play it in school, what was the next step after taking lessons, like making a band with your friends? Did you ever do that or jam with other guys?
I had a friend, Tommy, when we lived together, when I went to community college in Florida. He played guitar, and we played together, But it was always something else going on in my life where I didn't, pursuing music. I didn't pursue music.
Just for fun?
I wanted to be an actor and a stand-up. Yeah. And music was something I did on the side that kept my sanity, And I wasn't trying to be in the music business, which is...
Do you think you were able to enjoy it more because of that?
Yeah, I do. And now at this age when we play, it's for nothing but enjoyment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't, what am I going to make a record? You know what I mean?
Exactly. So I brought up that you and I play in this really fun blues band every week called Everything Hurts. We mostly... Do you want to tell everybody the quick story on that? Why do we call the band Everything Hurts?
Because everything hurts. Yeah.
No backstory?
No, everything hurts.
Okay. So
otherwise, the name of the band would be Hand Me the Advil.
So we mostly focus on the blues genre. What is it that attracts you to the blues, especially regarding creativity? Is there something? Why do you gravitate toward that? I know we do other stuff, but most of the stuff that you brought to the table is based on blues changes. Yeah,
and even the other stuff that's not blues, it's just because the way I feel when I hear it. You know what I mean?
Emotion.
Yeah, it just feels good, or feels like when Duane Allman would play the slide, until to this day, I get the chills when he does certain things, what I mean? I don't get that with pop or anything, it kind of, it's the feeling, the music is so, dare I say simple, but that's why there's so much feeling in it, you know what I mean?
You know what I got to say, because I played a lot before I met you. Some people, I think, play blues because it's pretty predictable. 12-bar blues, you know what's going to happen. You sing the melody, everybody plays solo, play the melody again. However, you pick songs that I would categorize as progressive blues, because if we're going to do Whipping Post, it's in 11/8. If we're going to do like Derek and the Dominoes or the Allman Brothers, this stuff is complicated.
Yeah,
what was the Memory of Elise? That one took a while.
Elizabeth Reed?
Elizabeth Reed, yeah, I'm sorry.
Elise, I remember her too.
Yeah, now that song...
Well, if you notice, we don't really play any straight blues.
We don't, and I think that's what keeps my attention. I like that you challenge us.
You know what I mean? So, the closest we play a straight blues is maybe Key to the Highway, or... the Old Love, maybe, but even Old Love.
Malted Milk.
Yeah, Malted Milk, right.
Yeah, but still, I think whether it's simple or complicated with us, I think we all like the feeling. There's been a lot of days where we feel like crap and we come out of there feeling great after 2 hours of music.
And that's why the music we play lends itself to improvisation. It makes it so much more interesting and fun, you know what I mean? Rather than just doing pop songs or, sometimes I wish we could just play and not sing anything,
Do you think that you've become good at soloing because you learned other people's solos first and then you started making your up? I mean, just kind of like a painter, they always learn the classics and,
right.
Someone like Salvador Dali would paint like different artists and then come up with his own style. Were you the same way? How did you develop your improvisational skills?
By listening to the records and then stopping the record and then trying to play what they were playing and then putting the record needle back on the record. And then, it wasn't until I learned, thanks to YouTube, I must say, finally, it was during the pandemic when I said, when I'm soloing, sometimes I don't understand why a note works or why it doesn't work. And I'm saying, all right, enough of this crap. No one's leaving the house. So so once I learned about soloing over changes and understanding what the chord notes were and why things work and don't fit and stuff, it opened up a whole new world, man. I learned stuff, stuff I never even thought about because I would just pick up the guitar while I'm thinking about the audition I did and I'm just strumming the guitar. Now I'm thinking about, okay, triads and inversions and chord tones. And, it's like, wow.
Well, that was my next question. To stay in shape, do you go over scales and then maybe modes? And what do you look at when you're searching YouTube? Like, what are your main focuses to get better at improvising?
Learning things that in the genre of what I play, but that I didn't know. And then I always look for guys that are much better than me that give lessons then I'll take that lesson. Like the one I'm doing now with this guy, Jack Ruch, his name is Ruch.
This guy's on YouTube.
Yeah. Then I'll take one lesson that really clicks for me, and I'll do that lesson for a week until it's second nature, And I had that when I was 16. If there was YouTube and lessons like that, then it might have been a different story, you know what I mean? But that's what I'll do. I'll take something and I'll understand it and work on it and get it down. Then I'll work on it the way it's the hardest to do, you know what I mean? Because it's easy to work on the stuff that comes easy.
Yeah.
It's harder to work on the stuff that doesn't come easy.
Right.
So
Why bother doing that? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good for the brain, too. So
you brought up a great point. I think in a lot of ways, kids have an easier time figuring out how to do stuff on their own now, because I remember when I started out being a drummer, my grandfather gave me this record player that had 4 speeds. I think it was 78, 45, 33, and 16.
Yes,
and I remember when I would get like a Tony Williams or a Louis Bellson or a Buddy Rich thing, I could slow it down to 16. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't see what he was doing.
But you can hear it.
Yeah.
That really trains your ear.
Yeah.
That's the one thing about doing it that way.
But now you can see, so that must help you watching their fingering or their style.
And you can slow it down on YouTube.
Yes, my students just showed me how to do that.
You know what I mean? That's a real...
it goes back in the day, right? It would change the speed and sound weird.
Yeah, well, sometimes when you even if you're watching it on YouTube, if the guy's playing a riff or a run, even if you're watching it, sometimes you don't understand what he's doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you brought up a good point. If I get hired for a gig where I have to learn a lot of songs, and then have one rehearsal and then play, first I'll listen to it. If I can't figure it out, then I'll look on YouTube, and then if I can't figure it out, I'll look for notation. You just have to, any way you can figure it out, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now it's much easier now.
I agree. There's a lot of options. Speaking of all this, what is the last concert, let's say within the last year, that really inspired you that you saw, and why?
Tedeschi Trucks.
Yeah, where was that and when?
That was at the Orpheum Theater. Because Derek Trucks is one of the best guitar players I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
Susan Tedeschi's fantastic. The whole band is amazing. And they play the music I love, and they do covers from the stuff I grew up listening to.
If you hear an album by those guys, when you go see them live, do you want it to be exactly the same, or do you like it when they take it somewhere else?
No, I want to see them play live. I don't care what they do.
I mean, I think the basis of most of the music you like is improvisational, so that shouldn't be surprising.
But I just want to hear and see them play. I don't care what they play. You know what I mean? If they play a song I like, that's fantastic. If they
was there anything on one of the concerts you saw recently that was surprising that like totally blew you away about maybe one of the guitar players?
Well, the last one I saw was Tedeschi Trucks, and
what was the coolest part of the show for you?
Being, hearing Derek Jux play the guitar. Just, music is fantastic. That's all I can say.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Now, here's one that's way out there. Do you think creativity could be implemented in curing people, or at least helping people with mental health struggles, depression, anxiety? Any insight? I mean, we just mentioned how we could be in a bad mood and play together and we feel better. Have you ever thought about that? Like,
not till that question. But yeah, of course, being creative, and it doesn't even just mean, playing an instrument. I remember, throughout the course of my life, trying to be an actor and when things got really tough and stuff, I remember I learned how to cook, and cooking, relaxed me and was creative and mental. Or you're feeling down, I would go to the gym or try to eat well, So, yeah, I think
these are all creative outlets. That's great.
Yeah,
not just music for you.
Yeah, exactly. Watching Jeopardy, or doing a crossword puzzle. Anytime you're using your brain, you're making yourself healthier. You know what I mean? Rather than always resorting to a drug or a fucking whatever.
You remind me of something I don't remember if it was when you were filming Somewhere in Queens, but you were in New York, and the two requirements you had is, can I bring my dog and my guitar? So does that help? I know it helps to have your dog there, but I
was doing the movie, I didn't bring.
What were you filming in New York? And I remember you said somebody let you borrow a guitar while you were there.
Yeah, I was doing, not the dog. The dog I left here. No,
you have told me, though, that sometimes you ask hotels if you can bring your dog. That is true.
Yeah, but sometimes I just want to get away from here when I knew I was going to be there a while. They didn't feel like schlepping a guitar, and one of the producers knew. Oh, I had asked the producer, and I said, is there a place around here I could rent a guitar? While we're shooting, just to have in the hotel room. And it turned out he had a friend who played guitar, so his buddy lent me one of his that I had in the hotel.
So that's great to relax. I mean, I know there's a lot of waiting around too when you're filming, right?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't bring it to the set.
Right.
But I didn't want to go the 5 weeks without playing the guitar.
Exactly.
So I wanted to play. It had nothing to do with, I would never bring it to the set. They had one on the set. When he first brought it, was on the set, and we were fucking around with it. But no, I wouldn't bring it every day.
Can you think of a time in your life where you were facing a challenge that really has nothing to do with art, that you use the creative part of your brain to help you get through it? I mean, you don't even have to say a specific answer, but would you say that's true? Sometimes when you're in a impossible situation.
I almost just answered that by like getting into cooking, or getting into health, or working out, or something, do something positive when something negative is.
So it sounds like you're creatively distracting your mind. Yeah. Just for like a mental break from what, is
right. Stress can be unhealthy, so do something healthy. To battle. You're never going to not have stress. It's how you deal with it.
Yeah, your response, right?
There's never no stress. Everything is stress.
That's why everything hurts.
Yeah, you get in a car to drive to the store and it's stressful.
Some of my favorite shows and films you have been in include, of course, Everybody Loves Raymond. Right. I just almost finished Men of a Certain Age. I'm Dying Up Here, Somewhere in Queens. Which of those allowed you to improvise or have your own personal input? I know that sometimes when you film stuff you have to stick to the script, but on any of those were you allowed any flexibility?
Well, the I'm Dying Up Here,
yeah, that's one of my favorites.
That was like hit whatever written line we needed to hit, but we were doing nothing but fucking around. So that was,
and that turned out great. I know the scene you're talking about.
Yeah,
you guys are playing the game.
That was the most freedom of anything. But everybody was Raymond. Stuck to the script. A couple of times I would have what they called second take lines, and I would suggest them, but I let them, I referred to them. I had a little more, like on Men of a Certain Age, I was able to discuss the character with Ray.
Yeah.
And, say, hey, what about this? What about that? Same thing on Somewhere in Queens.
A little bit of leeway, but sounds like I'm Dying Up Here was probably the most freedom.
Yeah, because Brad Garrett, he knows me. So he's Johnny, go ahead, do whatever you want,
You continue to perform live comedy sporadically with Ray Romano at different places. How do you customize your material for the various audiences that are at different venues? And I'm thinking of, I saw you a couple of years ago in Vegas. Obviously, if you were playing in a club in New York, compared to Vegas, you'd have to think about.
Yeah, I wouldn't do the gambling stuff. I wouldn't do the Vegas stuff.
So you do customize to where you are, right?
Well, that's a loaded question because I don't work enough on my act or do it enough anymore where I'm customizing my act. Now I just rely on fucking around, you know what I mean, and see what happens, you know what I mean? But, I was one that never really customized my act because I wanted to be an actor, so I was always fucking around with the crowd, but not, where you're from and what do you do. It was just jumping off what they said and acting out a little thing or whatever, you know what I mean? So I never really... I wasn't a craftsman like that, like writing down specific, these jokes are for this crowd. So my job was to be funny until they gave me the light. You know what I mean? Right.
And then I didn't see this when the only time I've seen you do comedy live was Vegas, and I didn't see anybody doing this. But in the past, how have you dealt with hecklers? Has that been challenging for you or easy?
It was easy because
I think I know you too well.
I destroyed them. I grew up in New York, and dealing with a heckler was, easier than your friends busting your chops.
Like walking down the street, right?
Yeah, so I just let them know I'm in charge.
Can you think of a good example? Do you remember anything good?
Yeah, one I'd rather not say on the air.
Can you think of a more family-friendly one?
I don't know. It's hard to, you're talking about 40 years of comedy. But, I can't tell you. I'll tell you off the air one. But I just let them know, I'm funnier than you. You know what I mean? And, most of the time, I would put them down and stuff and then say, all right, if you want to be funny, you get on stage. Otherwise, shut the fuck up,
All right, a couple more things here. We always end by, I give you a couple of quotes, and I want to hear your reaction. So, great writer, author Kurt Vonnegut once said, "We have to continually be jumping off cliffs and developing our wings on the way down." How do you think that applies to life?
Have a parachute. That's good. That's equivalent to take a risk. That's take a risk. You know what I mean? Which is good, because you're not going to get anything in life if you don't take a risk. But just don't put yourself so out on a limb you can't get back. You know what I mean?
No, that's good advice.
His line just reminds me of stand-up, where, you have to jump off that cliff. You know what I mean?
You have to test your material, right? I'm sure it took you a few years to really figure out what works.
Yeah, and you have to be in front of the audience. You can't do stand-up in a mirror. You know what I mean? So that reminds me of that.
One more, because you like George Carlin. He said, when you're born, you get a ticket to the freak show. When you're born in America, you get a front row seat.
That's pretty much right on. You can't change.
And that was a while ago. Do you think that's still true?
Yeah, he was prophetic. I mean, like his thing about, a lot of stupid people in a crowd is very dangerous. What's that line about? Don't underestimate the power of stupid people in a crowd or something.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Oh, no.
Two more. I got to ask this because I did my homework. Most of your stuff I've seen, but is it true you were once in a TV show called Platypus Man?
Yeah, that was Richard Jenny. Do you know him?
No.
He was one of the best stand-ups ever working, and I'm proud to say he was my friend. Yeah, that was a sitcom, Platypus Man, because there would be a definition of a platypus, and I can't remember what it was, but he was the equating his character to a platypus.
What was your part on that show?
I was a guest on one of the shows, and I can't remember what it was. It was kind of a takeoff on.
Was it like a game show?
No, it was a written sitcom.
No, I meant, what was the premise?
I don't remember. This was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But I remember it was a takeoff. My scene was like a takeoff on remember the end of Graduate when he's on the ball, yelling on the ball, Elaine.
Right.
Somebody was getting married, and I was banging on the church window because I didn't, something goofy like that. But I don't remember the specifics.
All right, last one, because I know your dog Gib very well. Is your dog Gibson creative in any way?
Yes, he's working on his second novel. It's How I Lick My Balls. Yeah, he's creative in figuring out ways to get treats from me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know.
He does have a good underbite that is very tantalizing.
He needs. If they made Invisalign for dogs, he'd be a candidate.
All right, John, thanks very much. Good to talk to you.
No, this was fun, Malcolm. Thank you. I appreciate it.
See you next time.
All right, buddy.